Так Путин что-то давал по кладбищу?
It's October 11, Ukraine Media Center Ukrinform starts its operation today, and my name is Svetlana Chparenko. Let's start our day with finding out about current situation in the south of Ukraine. Joining us online is Natalya Humenyuk, head of the United Coordination Press Center of Security and Defense Forces of the south of Ukraine. Good afternoon, Ms. Natalya. Glory to Ukraine, good afternoon. Glory to the heroes. Ms. Natalya, what is the situation in the south of our country? What are the results of the most recent strikes of the enemy? What is the aftermath? The situation remains quite tense, even regardless the fact that the enemy decreased the number of strikes by their tactical aviation. The tension is still there. On the contrary, it's still growing. The enemy continues pushing, using the air in a different way, intensifying the dropping of the shrapnel munitions from the UAVs. They feel that their field positions on the ground are being pushed back. They try to compensate their pressure on the local population by aerial vehicles. Also, tactical aviation activity is quite intense over the Snake Island, where the enemy cannot be active on the sea surface. They still feel the prevalence in the air. However, the air raid alerts were not realized. They were exercising mostly reconnaissance activities. We were documenting a number of UAVs, which may be the evidence of preparation by the enemy to further strikes. Within the recent days, there was a storm alert, and there was quite an intense storm in the Black Sea. We didn't observe within the last couple of days a group of ships of the enemy. They were mostly located at their bases. However, the undersurface missile carriers were keeping the tension on a high level. Currently, there are two submarine missile carriers on duty, carrying a total of 8 caliber missiles, which says that as soon as the storm is calming down, they are about to resume their activity. However, they still stay in the safe area, safe for them. The total number of shellings of the West Bank from the East Bank is about 60 to 70 shellings per day. Day to day, this number is somewhat falling. However, the use of the number of projectiles is at the level of 300 to 400. It's not the highest indicator, because previously we had more intense strikes with the use of larger number of projectiles. Now we see that they switched to economy mode. So to say, we cannot say that there is certain deficit, but we see the results of destruction of the enemy logistics and the destruction of their ammunition depots. You've mentioned the decrease of the number of shellings using aviations, and now you're saying that the artillery strikes decreased too. So talking about the correlation of different types of weapons used by the enemy. They still use the mortars, MLRS, cannon artillery. However, the fraction of the aerial threat, I mean the strike drones and the drones that drop the shrapnel munitions and the tactical aviation. So this correlation in terms of a destructive force is quite conditional. It's about 50-50 by the amount of destruction they inflict. But mathematically speaking, aviation is more of a expensive threat, so they use less aviation. So recently the missile strikes have decreased. You say that the enemy uses more of aerial vehicles now. So what is this tendency related to? I think that the UAVs are cheaper than the missiles. The missiles need to be manufactured and accumulated, and it's quite probable that such accumulation is going on in the eve of the heating season, and that threat evaluated by our partners and our intelligence, I mean in terms of repeating of the last years or previous years blackouts, it may be the evidence of this pause that they've taken to accumulate certain number of missiles. Still, within the last week, the enemy was reminding us about their intensity with a number of missile strikes. They were using both supersonic and ballistic missiles, which are most difficult to beat down by our air defense capabilities. However, they were using those missiles in very limited numbers. But talking about the drone strikes, they are mostly characterized by their intensity, a wave-to-wave nature, and with their capabilities of changing the routes. They may inflict strikes from different directions at the same time. 4 days ago, a Turkish vessel was partially damaged in the Black Sea basin. So what is the security situation in the Black Sea for the civilian vessels, and what is the condition of operation of the grain corridor? The corridor proposed by the security and defense forces is called humanitarian because its goal is to ensure the operation of the vessels in the Black Sea basin in a humanitarian way, even for those that were blocked in the ports of Odessa region from the very beginning of the full-scale invasion. For example, we have some vessels blocked in the ports of Mykolaiv and Kherson regions so far, and regardless of the fact that they stayed there for more than a year and a half, and some of them were even damaged due to the battle operations, still the owners intend to pull them out of the ports and to ensure the peaceful passage for them. We're not talking about Kherson and Mykolaiv region so far, but that corridor operating from the ports of Odessa region, it's quite stable, and regardless of the threat from the sea, well, not only from the sea but from the air too, because the enemy keeps systemically terrorizing that direction with the tactical aviation, dropping the guided aviation bombs in the direction of that corridor, or specifically the place of concentration of recommended sea routes around the Snake Island. And the specifics of the current is such that the dropped guided aviation bombs may result in detonation of sea bombs and turn them into cruise bombs that may result in a detonation like the one that happened to the Turkish vessel you're talking about. So the level of threat is still high, but the security and defense forces continue ensuring the security component within their competence and in the zone of their responsibility in the territorial waters of Ukraine, we ensure the security component, and every time, if you follow closely, as soon as the vessel which decided to use this humanitarian corridor leaves the territorial waters of Ukraine, the security and defense forces report about such facts immediately. Thank you, Ms. Natalya. Dear journalists, do we have any questions on the floor? Well, if we do not, one last question. We see the weather getting more complicated. September was quite favorable for advances of our security and defense forces. So how does the deterioration of the weather conditions influences the advances of our forces? There are no critical changes in the area of our responsibility. Yes, the weather has changed. Storm warning is a significant impact for the use of the area. This war is called the war of drones for a reason. Our security and defense forces use the drones in their activities quite intensely too, and that the deterioration of the weather conditions, specifically in the air, influences the intensity of use, however not critically on current stage. Counter-battery fight doesn't change significantly. The operation of artillery remains stable. We continue destroying the enemy. And talking about yesterday, it's minus 34 personnel, 9 armor, and 14 units of artillery. Thank you, Ms. Natalya, for reporting on the situation in the south of Ukraine. I'm reminding you, joining us was Natalya Humenyuk, the head of the United Coordination Press Center of Security and Defense Forces of the South, and we will continue at 14:30. We will find out about the situation in temporarily occupied Melitopol. We will be talking to Mayor of Melitopol, Ivan Fedorov. Stay tuned.